She was 5 feet tall, she wore frilly Victorian dresses, and she could shoot the cigarette out of your mouth before you even blinked. Meet Annie Oakley, the woman who turned the Wild West into her own personal shooting gallery. But here's what they don't tell you in those sanitized history books. Annie Oakley wasn't just a sharpshooter. She was a self-made millionaire, a spy, and a stone-cold feminist who taught 15,000 women how to handle a gun in a time when most men thought women belonged in the kitchen. Oh, and she once shot a German prince's hat clean off his head just to prove a point. Annie Oakley wasn't born a legend. She was born Phoebe Ann Moses in 1860, dirt poor, freezing in a tiny Ohio cabin. By age 6, her dad was dead. By age 8, she was sent to a foster home so abusive, she later called it a house of hell. But here's where things get crazy. One day, little Annie grabbed her dead father's rusty old rifle, sneaked into the woods, and came back with a rabbit, then a turkey, then enough game to feed her entire family. By age 10, she was paying off her mom's mortgage with her hunting skills. That's right, a 10-year-old girl was the family breadwinner. By 15, she was so good that when a traveling sharpshooter named Frank Butler rolled into town, she challenged him to a match. The crowd laughed at the tiny girl with a gun until she didn't miss, not once. 25 shots, 25 bullseyes. And Frank Butler, he didn't just lose, he fell in love. They got married, and Annie became his star attraction because, let's be real, nobody pays to see a guy shoot when there's a 5-foot-tall woman who can shoot backwards. When Buffalo Bill Cody came calling, Annie didn't just join the show, she stole it. Night after night, she'd perform impossible stunts, shooting dimes tossed in midair, splitting playing cards edge on, even sniping candles without putting out the flame. And the crowd, they lost their minds. Her signature move? Letting her husband hold a cigarette in his lips and shooting it clean out of his mouth. No hands, no flinching, just pure, icy nerves. And if you're thinking, that's insane, you're right. One wrong move and Frank's face is Swiss cheese. But Annie, she never missed. Not once. Here's the wildest part. Annie was making $1,500 a week. That's over $45,000 today, making her one of the richest self-made women in America. And she didn't just spend it on fancy dresses. Nope, she invested in property, stocks, and even paid for her entire family's education. Take that, 19th century sexism. In 1890, Annie was touring Europe, performing for kings and queens. Then, Prince Wilhelm of Germany, the guy who later started World War I, decided to test her. He handed her a cigar and said, "Can you shoot this out of my hand?" Annie, never one to back down, took aim and boom, she shot the cigar clean in half. But Wilhelm, he moved his hand at the last second. So Annie, without blinking, reloaded and said, "Let me try again." This time, she shot the cigar and his helmet's spike clean off. The crowd gasped. Wilhelm turned pale. And from that day on, Annie Oakley wasn't just a performer, she was a legend. Annie didn't just break records, she broke rules. In a time when women were told to stay home, she taught 15,000 women how to shoot for self-defense. She even wrote to President McKinley offering to train an all-female sharpshooter unit for the Spanish-American War. He said no. Big surprise. But here's the craziest theory. Some historians believe Annie was working as a spy during her European tours. Why? Because she had private meetings with multiple heads of state, and the US government suddenly got very interested in German military tactics right after her visit. Coincidence? Maybe, but with Annie Oakley, nothing was an accident. In 1890, disaster struck. A train wreck left Annie partially paralyzed, with doctors saying she'd never shoot again. But Annie, she spent 2 years relearning how to walk and then went right back to performing because that's how legends roll. When she died in 1926, over 20,000 people attended her funeral. Today, she's in the National Women's Hall of Fame, has a Broadway musical, Annie Get Your Gun, and even Fortnite added her as a skin. Not bad for a girl who started with a rusty rifle and a dream. So here's the question. Was Annie Oakley just a sharpshooter, or was she the original American badass, a woman who refused to be small, quiet, or anything less than legendary? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories of history's most unstoppable rebels, smash that subscribe button, because trust me, we're just getting started.